What would power structures look like without corruption? It's a question that feels almost like science fiction, doesn't it? In our timeline, history is a long, often brutal story of power, sought, seized, and abused. We see it in the marble halls of Rome, the gilded courts of Versailles, and the slick, air-conditioned offices of modern governments. Corruption, in its many forms, greed, nepotism, ego, the simple lust for control, seems to be an inseparable part of the human political condition. It's the shadow that follows every leader, the crack in the foundation of every republic and empire. But what if it wasn't? What if we could simulate a world where that fundamental flaw was absent? This is the very core of our thought experiment today. The Eternal Empire, a civilization where the concept of sin, or the selfish impulse that leads to corruption, never took root. This is our point of divergence, not a single event in time, but a fundamental alteration of human nature itself. To even begin, our AI simulation has to deconstruct what power means to us. Right now, we see it as a hierarchy, a pyramid. Those at the top command, and those at the bottom obey. This structure is inherently a battleground for dominance. But in a world without corruption, the very reason for this pyramid vanishes. Why climb a ladder if there is no prize at the top? Why hoard influence if it brings you no personal gain? The simulation suggests that power structures would transform from pyramids of control into networks of responsibility. Think less of a king on a throne and more of a central node in a complex, living web, whose only function is to ensure the health and flow of information and resources for the entire system. It's a complete paradigm shift. The goal is no longer to rule but to serve. The ambition is not to accumulate but to distribute. Let's visualize what that looks like. Imagine a capital city. In our world, the centers of government are often imposing, fortified structures. The White House behind its fences, the Kremlin behind its walls. They are designed, consciously or not, to project authority and to separate the rulers from the ruled. In this alternate timeline, our AI simulation renders a completely different scene. The central administrative hub of a city isn't a palace but a praxium, a sprawling open-air campus integrated with public parks, libraries, and workshops. The buildings are made of glass, light wood, and living green walls, designed for transparency, not intimidation. The air doesn't smell of old paper and secrecy, but of soil from the communal gardens and ozone from the clean energy conduits. The sounds are not of marching guards or motorcades, but of public debate in open forums, the chime of kinetic sculptures, and the quiet hum of collaborative work. In this world, a position of great responsibility doesn't grant you a bigger office. It grants you access to more complex problems to solve for the good of all. This initial butterfly effect is staggering. Without the need to protect against graft, bribery, or embezzlement, the entire bureaucratic apparatus of our world becomes obsolete. There are no labyrinthine tax codes designed to catch cheats, because cheating isn't a conceivable impulse. There are no multi-billion-dollar defense contracts awarded to a senator's crony, because cronyism is an alien concept. The cascading consequences are immense. Resources that we spend on oversight, on internal affairs, on financial regulation, are all freed up. The mental energy our society pours into creating checks and balances is instead channeled into creativity, infrastructure, and well-being. Politics ceases to be a game of chess with winners and losers, and becomes something more akin to communal gardening, a shared, ongoing effort to cultivate a thriving society. The very idea of a power struggle becomes a historical curiosity, like a fossil from a forgotten age. But if the structure itself is so radically different, built not on dominance but on service, it begs an even more profound question. What kind of person would even be drawn to these roles? Who becomes a leader when there is no personal glory, wealth, or power to be gained? This is where the simulation gets truly fascinating, as it moves from the architecture of governance to the soul of the governor. Leadership based on wisdom and compassion becomes the only logical outcome in a system stripped of selfish ambition. If you're finding this exploration of a world without sin as fascinating as I am, A quick like on the video really helps the channel continue these simulations. In our world, we're conditioned to see leadership as a prize to be won. The ambitious, the charismatic, the ruthless. These are the archetypes that claw their way to the top. But in the eternal empire, where the very impulse for personal gain at others' expense is absent, what motivates a person to lead? The answer our AI simulation provides is beautifully simple. A sense of duty born from profound empathy and a recognized capacity for sound judgment. Leaders don't rise, they are recognized. Imagine a selection process completely alien to our own. There are no campaigns, no attack ads, no empty promises. Instead, the simulation shows us communities identifying potential leaders through a lifetime of observation. It's the mediator who consistently resolves neighborhood disputes with fairness, the engineer who redesigns a public space for better accessibility without being asked, or the archivist who can recall historical precedents to inform a current dilemma. These individuals aren't seeking power. In fact, many are reluctant, seeing the immense responsibility for what it is. Their ascension is a communal request, a draft. A council might approach a master craftswoman not because she's wealthy or popular, but because for decades, her apprentices have become not just skilled artisans, but better people. Her wisdom is a proven, tangible force. This is the butterfly effect of our point of divergence in action. Leadership becomes a burden of service you are asked to carry, not a crown you snatch for yourself. Let's look at what the AI renders as a leader in this alternate timeline. Forget the power suit or the military uniform. The simulation generates an image of a city's first citizen in his late 60s. He's not in an opulent office, but in a vast, sunlit greenhouse, his hands stained with soil, discussing water reclamation with a team of young botanists. He wears simple, durable clothing, indistinguishable from anyone else's. The only mark of his station is a small, intricately carved wooden disc worn on a leather cord around his neck, a symbol given to him by the community, representing not authority, but the trust they've placed in him. The air smells of damp earth, blooming flora, and the clean, metallic tang of purified water. The sound is of quiet, collaborative discussion. When he speaks, his voice is calm and measured. He doesn't command. He asks questions, listens intently, and synthesizes ideas. His authority stems not from his position, but from the palpable sense that his every decision is weighed against a single criterion: the long-term well-being of all. This shift has cascading consequences that redefine the very DNA of society. In our timeline, education is often a race to acquire skills for personal advancement. In the Eternal Empire, education is about cultivating holistic wisdom. Emotional intelligence, systems thinking, and ethical reasoning are taught with the same rigor as mathematics or physics. The goal is to create not just capable workers, but compassionate and wise citizens. Ambition isn't for personal glory, but for mastering a skill that can better serve the whole. This dismantles our entire concept of social hierarchy. An individual's value isn't measured by their influence or wealth, but by the depth of their compassion and the utility of their wisdom. This is a world without the corrosive envy and status anxiety that drives so much of our own culture. So we have a society that elevates its most empathetic and wise, not its most ambitious. These leaders are servants, not rulers, chosen for their proven character. But if the people in charge are so fundamentally different, how does that change the actual machinery of government? What does the day-to-day process of politics look like when it's not a battle for power but a collaborative project? That's where we're going next. Politics as a service to the community completely redefines the word itself, stripping it of all the baggage we associate with it. In our timeline, politics is a zero-sum game, a gladiator pit of ideologies and ambitions, where victory for one side means defeat for the other. It's built on division, compromise born of exhaustion, and the pursuit of power for its own sake. But in the Eternal Empire, our AI simulation shows us a process that is almost unrecognizable. Here, politics isn't a battle to be won. It's a complex problem to be solved. like engineering a bridge or composing a symphony. The entire machinery of government, a direct cascading consequence of a world without sin, is reconfigured from an adversarial system into a collaborative diagnostic engine for societal well-being. There are no political parties because the very concept of a party, a faction organized to seize power, is illogical when no one desires power for personal gain. Let's dive into what the AI visualizes as a political debate in this alternate timeline. Forget the raucous chambers of a parliament or Congress. The simulation renders a civic deliberation hall. It's a vast, circular structure built around a central holographic display. The architecture is open, with tiers of seating that flow into one another, eliminating any sense of an opposition bench. We see a session in progress. The topic: a proposed shift in energy production from geothermal to a new form of tidal generation. There's no shouting, no grandstanding. Instead, a lead facilitator, one of the leaders we discussed, guides a conversation. An engineer is at a console, running models on the holographic display, showing energy output and potential environmental impacts. A marine biologist points to data on local marine ecosystems, her concerns listened to with absolute focus. A logistician outlines the resource and labor requirements. The air hums not with conflict, but with intense, quiet concentration, smelling faintly of ozone from the technology and the old, recycled paper of the reference archives lining the walls. The sound is a murmur of technical questions and data-driven responses. This isn't politics as we know it. It's a society's greatest minds crowdsourcing a solution in real time. The cascading consequences of this approach fundamentally alter the nature of law and bureaucracy. In our world, laws are often reactive instruments of control, designed to punish transgression. Here, laws are more like system-wide protocols or operational guidelines, proactively designed for optimal function. A new law isn't a mandate imposed from on high. It's a public rollout of a new, more efficient method, explained with transparent data that every citizen can access and understand. Compliance comes not from fear of punishment, but from a shared understanding of the collective benefit. Bureaucracy, stripped of the need to be a bulwark against corruption and internal power plays, becomes what it was always supposed to be: a hyper-efficient system for information management and service delivery. Imagine a public service interface so intuitive and responsive that it feels less like dealing with a government and more like consulting a helpful, omniscient librarian. This entire framework of politics as a service rests on the idea that those involved are not career politicians, but temporary stewards. The facilitator in our simulation might be a renowned physicist who was asked by her community to serve a 10-year term guiding the Energy Council. When her term is over, she will eagerly return to her research lab. Her authority came not from a title, but from her recognized expertise and the trust placed in her to guide the process without bias. The goal isn't to build a personal legacy or a political dynasty, but to contribute a specific skill set and then step aside. This system of collaborative governance, where the goal is the best outcome rather than a personal win, is only possible because of one fundamental change in human psychology that our point of divergence created. The very idea of competing for the right to make these decisions has been erased. But what does a society look like when that primal drive for dominance, a drive that has defined every power struggle in our own history, simply isn't there? The absence of competition for power is perhaps the most profoundly alien concept our AI simulation has had to model, because it requires us to uninstall a piece of software that has been running in humanity's core programming for millennia. In our timeline, competition is the engine of everything, from the schoolyard to the stock market. We celebrate it, we incentivize it, and we build our entire social and economic hierarchies around the idea of a ladder that must be climbed, often by stepping on the hands of others. The drive for dominance is the ghost in our machine, the unspoken motivation behind so much of our history, from the conquests of Alexander the Great to the corporate takeovers that define modern capitalism. But in this alternate timeline, a direct cascading consequence of our point of divergence, that ghost has been exorcised. The very concept of a power vacuum is nonsensical here, because there is no ambient pressure to fill it, so what takes its place? How are people chosen for roles of great responsibility? Our AI simulation visualizes a process that is less like an election and more like a call to competence. Let's watch one unfold. The simulation renders a quiet, sunlit workshop. The air smells of sawdust, linseed oil, and the faint metallic scent of precision tools. A woman, a master boatwright in her early 40s, is examining the curve of a hull, her hands tracing the lines with a familiarity that speaks of a lifetime of dedication. A small delegation enters, not with fanfare, but with a quiet deference. They are members of the Regional Logistics Council. They don't offer her a position or a title. They present her with a problem. They unroll a holographic map showing shifting oceanic currents and the need to redesign their coastal transport fleet for greater efficiency and safety. "Your designs," the lead delegate says, her voice resonating with genuine respect, "are the only ones that have shown a true understanding of the new fluid dynamics. We don't need a manager. We need your mind, your hands. We need you to guide this project." The boatwright looks from the hologram to her own unfinished work. We see not a flicker of ambition in her eyes, but the immense, crushing weight of responsibility. Her acceptance isn't a cheer of victory. It's a quiet, solemn nod. It's a duty, not a prize. This complete paradigm shift rechannels the entire flow of human ambition. In a world without a ladder of power to climb, ambition doesn't vanish. It turns inward and outward in a completely different direction. The drive becomes the pursuit of mastery. The goal isn't to be the boss of 1,000 people, but to be the one person who can solve a problem no one else can. Status and respect are awarded not for the number of individuals you command, but for the depth of your skill and the generosity with which you share it. Think of it like a world-class orchestra. The concert master isn't the boss of the cellist. They are both masters of their domains, their authority flowing from their recognized excellence, working in concert to create something beautiful. In this alternate timeline, a master stonemason who can build a flawless arch holds as much social currency as a systems theorist who can optimize a continent's food distribution network. This butterfly effect completely dismantles the economic incentives for wealth hoarding and corporate warfare that have defined our own history. Why accumulate power when the ultimate status symbol is contribution? The psychological impact of this is staggering. Imagine a world without the corrosive anxiety of the rat race. A world without imposter syndrome born from political maneuvering. A world where your value is measured by your craft, not your rank. The very stories they tell are different. Our AI scans their cultural archives and finds no epics about wars for a throne, no dramas about corporate backstabbing. The grand narratives of the Eternal Empire are about collaborative struggles against cosmic challenges, diverting an asteroid, curing a planetary blight, understanding a new law of physics. The central conflict isn't who will win, but can we together solve this? The heroes are not kings and conquerors, but thinkers, builders, and healers. They would look at our history, at the billions of lives spent and lost in the simple, brutal competition for power, with a kind of sorrowful bewilderment, like a doctor observing a self-destructive pathology. But this elegant system of collaborative stewardship and non-competition presents a critical vulnerability. If no one is driven by the ambition to enforce rules, and there is no coercive state apparatus to compel obedience, what stops this entire cooperative marvel from fracturing? What prevents individuals from acting against the collective good when there is no police force, no judiciary in the way we understand it? The stability of this entire timeline hinges on a mechanism far more subtle and pervasive than any law. It's not found in any government building or court, but in the universal ethical codes that have become as fundamental to their society as the air they breathe. Universal ethical codes, not imposed laws, form the very bedrock of the Eternal Empire's stability, and this is a direct cascading consequence of a world without the drive for selfish dominance. In our timeline, laws are external fences. They are built on the assumption of transgression, a set of rules designed to contain the worst of us. They are a necessary, often clumsy, patch for the flaws in our own source code. But in this alternate timeline, the code itself is different. Ethics aren't an external framework, they are an internal operating system. It's the difference between needing a sign that says "do not steal" and simply not having the conceptual architecture for theft in the first place. The AI simulation visualizes this not as a society of saints, but as a society of profound rational empathy, where the negative impact of an action on the whole is felt by the individual as a personal, logical failure, like a mathematician finding a flaw in their own proof. Let's ask the AI simulation to show us what happens when something of value is left unattended. We see a public transit hub, not of steel and concrete, but of living, sculpted wood and smart crystal that glows softly with arrival and departure times. The air smells of ozone from the silent, gliding vehicles and the faint scent of flowering vines that climb the archways. A person, engrossed in a holographic conversation, gets up from a bench and walks away, leaving behind a personal data pad. The device is thin, elegant, and humming with potential. In our world, this moment is pregnant with risk. Here, it's simply a problem to be solved. A young child, no older than 7, spots it. There is no flicker of temptation, no thought of finders keepers. The AI renders the child's thought process as a simple, logical sequence. An object is displaced. Its owner is experiencing a deficit. The system is momentarily imbalanced. The child picks it up, not with the glee of discovery, but with a quiet sense of purpose. They tap the public interface on the bench, and the datapad's unique energy signature is broadcast to the local network. Item found at Sunarch Station. The system announces softly. The owner, now a block away, is notified. The whole event is as dramatic as misplacing a book in your own home. It's a logistical hiccup, not a moral crisis. This entire system is built upon a single, foundational principle that is taught not through scripture or statute, but through physics, biology, and art. They call it coherent flourishing. The idea is that the universe, and life within it, tends toward greater complexity, integration, and harmony. An action is good if it contributes to this coherence. An action is inefficient or discordant if it creates friction, reduces potential, or isolates apart from the whole. It's a moral framework that is also a scientific one. The butterfly effect of a single selfish act isn't just a philosophical concept. To them, it's a measurable disruption in the social fabric, a wave of discord that diminishes everyone. So when they make a choice, the primary calculation isn't "what's in it for me," but "does this increase or decrease the coherence of the whole?" This is the ultimate expression of the point of divergence that began our journey, a humanity that evolved to see itself not as a collection of competing individuals, but as a single, interconnected consciousness, striving for a more elegant and harmonious state of being. But a principle, no matter how profound, is not a manual. This code of coherent flourishing is a powerful compass, but a compass is useless without navigators who can read the stars and chart a course through unfamiliar waters. What happens when two actions both seem to promote coherence, but are mutually exclusive? What about novel ethical dilemmas born from new technologies or unforeseen cosmic events, where the consequences are impossible to fully calculate? Guiding a civilization through these complex gray areas requires more than just a universally held belief. It requires a specific kind of human institution, one that doesn't legislate or command, but interprets and illuminates. This is where the role of the councils of wisdom becomes absolutely critical. The role of councils of wisdom becomes absolutely central in navigating the gray areas of this alternate timeline, acting not as a government, but as a cognitive and ethical lens for the entire civilization. Think about it. In our world, power is exercised, laws are enforced, judgments are passed down. These councils do none of that. Their purpose is not to control, but to clarify. They are less like a Supreme Court and more like the world's most profound and collaborative think tank, a collective of humanity's most adept systems thinkers, artists, and empaths. Their selection isn't a political process. There are no campaigns, no elections, no appointments. The AI simulation shows us that members are simply recognized. They are individuals who, over their lifetimes, have demonstrated an exceptional capacity for what this society calls multi-perspective synthesis. The ability to hold contradictory truths in their mind, to feel the emotional weight of a logical argument, and to perceive the long-term, cascading consequences of a decision far beyond the immediate horizon. They are the cartographers of consequence, the poets of probability. Let's dive into the simulation to see one in session. Forget our images of dark-paneled courtrooms or grand parliamentary chambers. The AI visualizes a chamber of confluence on a high plateau, open to the sky on one side, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of mountain herbs and ionized air. There is no head of the table, no podium. The council members, perhaps a dozen of varying ages and backgrounds, sit on smooth, warm stones arranged in a gentle spiral. In the center, a column of light shifts and flows, a living holographic display. They are not debating, they are weaving. One member, a renowned bioethicist, presents a purely logical model of a new genetic therapy. As she speaks, the hologram visualizes the data as a crystalline structure. Then, a musician on the council plays a short, haunting melody on a stringed instrument, translating the potential emotional cost of the therapy, the grief of failure, the hubris of success, into sound. The crystalline structure in the center shimmers, and its colors deepen with this new layer of information. An elder, who has lived through a past societal shift, shares an anecdotal memory, a story that adds a layer of lived human experience. Each input is a thread, and together, they are weaving a tapestry of understanding so complete that the right path becomes not a matter of opinion, but of shared, illuminated perception. The true power of this system, the ultimate expression of the butterfly effect from our point of divergence, is how these councils tackle novel dilemmas. Imagine a truly new problem, something our own timeline is just beginning to wrestle with: the ethics of uploading a consciousness. In our world, this would be a chaotic storm of legal battles, corporate gold rushing, and religious proclamations. Here, it is a subject for a guidance illumination. The council would be convened not to pass a law, but to explore the very essence of the question. Our AI simulation projects the process. They would commission artists to create immersive sensory experiences of what digital existence might feel like. They would have physicists and philosophers collaborate on models of non-biological consciousness. They would spend months, maybe years, in deep contemplation, not to arrive at a yes or no, but to produce a work, part scientific paper, part epic poem, part philosophical treatise, that lays bare every conceivable facet of the issue for the entire population. The final document wouldn't be a command, it would be a gift of clarity, allowing every individual in the society to align their own actions with the principle of coherent flourishing, armed with the deepest possible understanding. But these councils operate at the highest level, charting the course for the entire civilization. They are concerned with the grand, species-defining questions. What happens when the discord is smaller, more personal? Even in a world without sin, misunderstandings happen. Grief can make a person act in a discordant way. A momentary lapse in awareness can cause an accident that harms another. What does a crime look like in a world without punishment? And how is balance restored when an individual act of disharmony, however unintentional, causes a ripple of pain through the community? This is where the macro-level philosophy of the councils must translate to the micro-level of individual lives. Which brings us to the fascinating concept of restorative justice and harmonious conflict resolution. Restorative justice and harmonious conflict resolution, in this alternate timeline, is perhaps the most profound departure from our own reality, because it fundamentally redefines what it means when things go wrong. Forget courtrooms, gavels, and the cold calculus of punishment. The very concept of crime as we know it, an act against the state, is absent. Instead, there are only acts of disharmony, moments where an individual's actions become incoherent with the well-being of the whole. And the response isn't retribution, it's restoration. Let's run a scenario through the AI simulation. Imagine an individual, overwhelmed by a private grief we can all understand, has a momentary, reckless lapse. In our world, maybe it's a car accident caused by distraction. In theirs, let's say they accidentally destroy a complex kinetic sculpture in a public square, a piece of art beloved by the community. In our timeline, this sparks a chain of adversarial actions: police reports, insurance claims, lawsuits, maybe even criminal charges for destruction of property. It's a process designed to assign blame and extract a price. Here, the butterfly effect of our point of divergence reveals a completely different path. The immediate community response is not anger, but deep concern. The first question asked is not, "Why did you do this?" but, "What pain caused this rift in your awareness?" The AI visualizes the process that follows, called a circle of coherence. It's not held in a sterile, intimidating chamber, but in a quiet, sunlit room with comfortable seating arranged in a true circle. The air is filled with the scent of brewing herbal tea. There is no judge, no jury. There are the harmonizers, individuals trained in facilitating empathic communication, the person who caused the damage, the artists who created the sculpture, and members of the community who felt its loss. The goal isn't to determine guilt, but to collectively map the anatomy of the harm. The grieving individual, guided gently, speaks their truth, not as a defense, but as an offering of understanding. The artists then share the story of their creation, the hours of labor, the spark of inspiration, and the specific sense of void its absence creates. They don't speak to accuse, they speak to make the invisible weight of their loss tangible. A child might even speak about how they miss watching the sculpture's moving parts catch the morning light. Each testimony is a thread, and together they are not weaving a case, but reweaving a torn piece of the communal tapestry. The resolution, therefore, is never a punishment. It's a path of reattunement, a plan co-created by everyone in the circle. The person who caused the harm isn't sentenced to community service. They might volunteer to apprentice with the artists, learning the skills needed to help rebuild the sculpture, not as a debt to be paid, but as a direct, physical act of making whole what was broken. Through this process, they don't just pay for their mistake. They become intimately connected to the value of what was lost and are fully, compassionately reintegrated into the community's flow. Justice in this world isn't about balancing the scales by adding more suffering. It's about healing the wound, both in the community and in the individual who caused it. This entire system is a living testament to their core belief in interconnectedness. This deep ingrained philosophy of restorative harmony isn't just an abstract social protocol for when things go wrong. It's a proactive principle that shapes their entire physical environment. If this is how they heal rifts between people, imagine how they design the very spaces they live in to prevent those rifts from even forming. The idea of restoring balance isn't just a reaction. It's woven directly into the blueprint of their world, transforming their urban landscapes from mere collections of buildings and streets into something far more profound. It turns them into true cities as centers of wisdom and abundance. Cities as centers of wisdom and abundance are the ultimate physical manifestation of this society's core philosophy, a stark contrast to the concrete jungles and sprawling suburbs that define so much of our own world. Where our cities are often engines of commerce, designed for efficiency and the movement of capital, theirs are conceived as living organisms, engineered to cultivate human potential and communal well-being. The restorative harmony we just witnessed isn't just a social program, it's the architectural source code for their entire civilization. Let's step into the AI simulation one last time to walk the streets of one of these urban centers. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather, the lack of it. There are no blaring horns, no screeching tires, no cacophony of 1,000 competing advertisements. Instead, you hear the gentle hum of silent, automated public transport gliding along magnetic pathways, the sound of flowing water from aqueducts and fountains that are both beautiful and functional, and the murmur of human conversation, unhurried and clear. The air itself feels different, clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and blossoms from the sky gardens that spiral up the sides of buildings. The architecture eschews the harsh grid of our cities. Streets curve in organic, flowing lines, designed to slow movement and encourage observation. Buildings, constructed from self-healing bioconcrete and light-permeable wood, seem to breathe, with vast atriums, open-air walkways, and walls covered in living tapestries of moss and flowering vines. Every element is meticulously designed not just for function, but to subtly guide the human psyche toward peace and connection. There is no visual noise, only visual nourishment. This design is a direct, cascading consequence of a society without corruption or the frantic competition for power and resources. In a world without the drive for private accumulation, the very concept of a downtown business district, with its imposing skyscrapers acting as monuments to corporate power, simply vanishes. In its place, the city's core is a sprawling, park-like campus, dedicated to learning and creation. You'd find no corporate headquarters, but you would find the centers for collaborative inquiry, the artisan guilds, and the halls of contemplation. Abundance here isn't a matter of wealth, but of design. Food is grown in massive, sun-drenched vertical farms integrated into residential towers, with produce harvested and brought to communal kitchens just meters away. The idea of a complex, wasteful supply chain is an absurdity. Private space is respected, of course. Places for solitude and family are essential, but the design encourages a fluid boundary with the communal. Residential clusters are built around shared courtyards, workshops, libraries, and childcare facilities, making interaction and mutual support the path of least resistance. This physical layout is the immune system of their society, proactively dissolving the isolation, scarcity, and stress that, in our timeline, so often become the breeding grounds for conflict and disharmony. These cities aren't just places to live, they are active participants in the cultivation of wisdom. And here, our AI simulation reaches its terminus. We step back from this vision of the eternal empire, this speculative journey into governance without sin, and the quiet hum of that world fades, replaced by the familiar, beautiful, chaotic, and often painful complexity of our own. This alternate timeline, born from a single point of divergence where humanity chose a different path, was never meant to be a perfect utopia to be envied. It serves as a powerful mirror, showing us that the world we inhabit, with its corruption and its heroism, its conflicts and its compassion, was never a certainty. It is the result of a million choices, a delicate and fragile construction balanced on the knife edge of history. The pasts that never existed illuminate the profound contingency of our present, reminding us that the foundations of our reality are perhaps not as solid as they seem. What detail or consequence of this alternate history did you find most impactful? Was it the nature of leadership, the restorative justice system, or these living cities of wisdom? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you believe, as we do, that exploring these pasts that never were is the best way to understand the present we have, then subscribe to How Would It Be by AI and ring that notification bell. Together, we'll continue to challenge the story of us, one what if at a time.